The good doctor has taken the stand in his own defense, Dr. Gerhardt Konig, and he claims that it was self-defense when he beat his wife with a rock. She has already taken the stand, Arielle Konig, the victim. She told her side of the story to his jury. Again, he's facing up to life behind bars if convicted of attempted second-degree murder. There he is. He decided to take the stand in his own defense. There he is making his way up. What do you think? Did you watch any of his testimony? Well, we're going to break it down with a very special guest, a world-renowned body language expert, to break down his testimony and what she perceives to be deception. But first, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. Let's bring that true crime family back together. Now, the case against Dr. Gerhardt Konig. So here to discuss, we have Susan Constantine, who is a jury consultant and also a body language expert, world-renowned body language expert, I might add, and a friend of the program. Thank you for being here. We need to talk about the good doctor here, Susan.
That sounds good to me. Listen, I've looked at all the tapes. I think we're going to have fun with this one, Matt, together. Are you ready to get started?
Let's do it. Let's first start with Konig, the good doctor, taking the stand. Let me play this. What are you noticing with his body language?
Well, with his body language from the very beginning, he's very structured, right? He's one of these kind of guys that I would call him an analytical person. So analytical people are very structured. Their hair is perfect. It's combed perfectly. Kind of that engineer type. This is what I'm seeing with him. So he walks up, he puts his hands straight up, fingers are straight up. So at this point, I don't see any red flags, but we are just getting started here, Matt.
Yeah, we're just getting started. And what do you make of his appearance too? He's in custody. He was denied bail. But, for someone that wants to come across as a doctor and someone put together, I find the undershirt and I find no jacket. It kind of rubs me a certain kind of way.
Sure. And that's what he's trying to do is he's trying to connect with that jury on a personal level, like non-intimidating doctor level. And we know this because there's a term that's called impression cognition, like impression cognition. When you're dressed in a suit and tie, there is a certain image, then people automatically assume there's a high level of authority, right? But the fact that he's got the t-shirt on and the blue shirt on is no different than we've seen with women when they're testifying, where they have a shell with a sweater over the top. It's kind of like that college boy look. And also the t-shirt underneath really doesn't do him well. If it were me and I were doing, and I analyze defendants and prepare them for trial. It's how I started my career, was in witness preparation. Oh, absolutely. I would have put him in a really nice, charcoal gray. He should look super professional, not casual like this, as if he has no college education or something. It's not appropriate.
Yeah, but also maybe it's just also culture. We're talking about Hawaii where this trial is taking place. But I think I'm with you, Susan. I'm with you. If you're fighting for your life because he's facing life behind bars, put on a sport coat.
At least.
Yeah. So before we get into him talking about the attack and the alleged him trying to push his wife off the cliff and what he says, we're first going to talk about and lay the groundwork of the emotional affair and how they got there.
Here you are, a couple of months now, you had some suspicion, some red flags. Asked her about it a couple of times. She denies it, defensive. Now you open it up and you see this.
Yeah.
Tell the jury how you felt. How did it make you feel?
I was devastated. There's obviously something going on.
Okay. So
I didn't know what to do.
Okay. So what did you do?
So I
Let me pause it right there. Is that real emotion?
No, it's not. This is so faked. It's like liars, liars, pants on fire. So let me tell you there's so much going on here, Matt. First of all, he changes, doesn't even use her first name. He said she kept, right? Not his wife, his first name. So now he's already creating this distancing. Not a good thing. Sniff. He sniffs. See it right there. You've actually paused it. That is a form of anger, but he also has these upper lips that kind of pop up. That's disgust. So let me share with you what we're looking at. Anger, disgust, and there. I don't see the contempt here yet, but when you put those three things together, that's an anaconda. It's an abbreviation for what we see before a premeditated attack. This is a cocktail for what we see in people that act out violence on someone. So they're showing you a high level of disgust and contempt when you see the nasal fabial folds kind of sniff out, and then he sniffs, which is the anger. So there's so much going on here. The other thing is that you notice, and you probably see this too, you see these horizontal lines that kind of come across here. He's always looking up, so he's kind of grabbing information he's trying to recall, but it's causing stress to do that. Then what happens is, and it's really interesting, you'll see the horizontal across the forehead disappear and it'll go on one side of the forehead, and that is associated with deception. So what does that mean? Is that the face movements, the muscles must move within synchrony. They're attached to the facial nerve, and when a real emotion is felt, which you believe what you're saying, they synchronize in perfect harmony. When you see one side, only one side, and you'll see throughout it, and I want people to pay attention, this will fall off, and you'll see it just right over the top of his forehead, and his eyebrows become asymmetrical. So any form of asymmetry is associated with deception.
Really? Okay, so this is fascinating already. So you're already seeing a little bit of lying by the good doctor. So let's continue to watch this clip.
That's the main communication platform that the anesthesiology group uses. And so I was using it every day, communicating with the rest of the group and during our business meetings. And so I knew that WhatsApp, since even though it's primarily an app on your phone, there's a web interface. You can log into WhatsApp on your computer through the browser as well, and it'll basically just duplicate everything that's on your account.
And then what did you do the next day?
So I took our phone upstairs to my computer, which is in the hallway upstairs, and I logged into her WhatsApp
right there
on my computer.
So you could.
Okay, see what you see. You'll see where they fall off on the one side, and you see them more prominent on the other side. These are the things you look for, Matt, when I'm looking for deception. And I'm so sorry for interrupting you, but I had to jump in and say something here.
Yeah, we love it.
Okay, so he's using a lot of what we call convincing, like he'll raise his eyebrows, and he does this throughout. So I'm going to say that is his baseline. He is working really hard to try to convince us. Now, if he's a defendant, wouldn't you want to? You want to make sure that somebody believes you. So a lot of times when you do that, when you're overworking, you'll see the brows lift, almost in worry, where the inner side of the brows, and you'll see them. It's not doing it here. They're more horizontal, but they also then will kind of go like an angle. Both of them like this with horizontal lines here. That is someone that's really struggling. He's really struggling. It's called pain and suffering. I'm really struggling to do this. But look at that, the corner dimples right here. That's exasperation, right? Think about it. It's anger and exasperation, like, You know, you can see it. One thing to understand about facial expressions and emotions, try them on yourself. And when you hear something from somebody else, watch what their expression is, and you can sync it together. So anyway, and then the scratching, like here's, I don't know, I'm uncertain. That is connecting with also the other indicators that I'm seeing. So that is what we call a manipulator. Anytime stroking the hair, itching, rubbing the nose, where this is a form of self-soothing.
Well, that's interesting because this was much of his testimony, and we're analyzing the direct testimony right now, but much of it was putting the blame on Arielle, his wife, who he allegedly attacked because, well, he admitted to attacking her, but he says it's self-defense. We'll get into it. You don't want to miss that. But so, you know, he's really talking the majority of his direct testimony about this emotional affair. So is he feeling sorry for himself? Is he feeling scared during this testimony, or how do you perceive it so far?
I think it's all of the above. These are what we call complex emotions. There's not just one. It doesn't like one emotion here cuts off and goes into another one. There is a lot of, it's called flooding, lots of emotion that are going on, fear, concern, worry, trying to tell the story differently than trying to come across plausible, but you're under the spotlight of everybody looking at you. When in itself will cause cognitive load, Matt. I mean, if we were bombarded and you're trying to really, hey, listen, that jury's going to choose whether I'm guilty or not, that creates stress. So that would be considered normal. Like if somebody were taking the stand for the first time, they've never done this before, that in itself can be very intimidating. I think you agree. We're in the courtroom, right, Matt? We see it, right? It's kind of a scary deal. Plus, he's got his license. His wife is gone. He's got to convince these people. So anyway, let's go forward because I know you've got a lot of other stuff we can talk about.
Yeah, we can actually move from the affair to why he brought on the trail a satchel, a bag full of medicine, because he is also accused of not only trying to push her off the cliff, but then maybe stab her with some sort. He's an anesthesiologist. Stab her with some sort of syringe.
Okay, so this was in the bag. Just a couple of things. So like, what is this? What is this?
Those are bags of saline. The one on the left is still sealed, and the one on the right has medication in it.
Okay, and this is a stethoscope. Is that right?
Yes.
What is this thing up here? This and that.
Oral airways for emergencies and elective surgery.
Okay, these are all stuff that you had at home regularly when you were either on call or depending on where you were going to work.
Yeah, this is everything that's usually in my bag, and it's everything that I would need to respond to different emergencies.
Okay. Could we please also publish State's Exhibit 103? That's also in evidence. Okay. This was also in your bag, according to them. Is that your work ID?
Yes.
Okay. The last shift you had before this trip, we can take that down. Where had you been working?
At the hospital.
Okay. Do you remember in what unit?
Labor and delivery.
Okay. So after that shift, would it be normal for you to have that bag?
Yes.
And why is that?
Because I keep the bag with me for the entire shift. It's a 24-hour shift. I start at 7 a.m. and I keep going until 7 a.m. the next day. And so when my shift ends, unless I'm actively at the hospital taking care of something there, I'm at home when my shift ends. And so I was at home when my shift ended that day, and that's why I had the bag with me.
Oh, you're at home because you're on call.
Yes.
Okay. Now, prior to this trip to Oahu, did Arielle know about this bag and the fact that you had medication syringes in it?
Absolutely.
Okay, Susan, what do you think? Did he bring the bag there for this alleged crime, or did he just happen to have it with him?
What's important is that the jury's got to decide that, right?
Of course.
So does a doctor carry all that stuff with him on a regular basis? What I would do is, I don't even know, but did they have other witnesses saying he carried this thing with him in the car wherever he went, and he's carried it in other trips. He's also brought it in previous times where he went hiking or what have you. Was that something that was kind of normal for him? And then the question is, what's in it? What kind of medication was it? Is it something you would need in case of an emergency? The one thing is that I saw, of course, the worry. We saw the worry. That's there, very consistent. He's very worried. He states that he uses that this is something that he has at home. If we went back even to it, you don't even have to go there. But he shoulder shrugs. Right when he said that, you literally can cancel out the word he just said before it because it wasn't true. So that was a deceptive indicator. Anytime you see a micro, which is a form of leakage, it contradicts what the person says the sentence prior to when he actually verbalized it.
Very fascinating, because again, we're seeing all those cues and you're teaching us how to recognize them with his facial expressions. Well, now we finally made it there in the testimony. They finally get there, right? With the incident in question. And he's going to call it self-defense. He's going to describe why he felt the need to do violence against his wife. And here we go.
After that, she said, let's take a selfie by the cliff's edge.
That was her idea.
Yes.
Okay. Did you guys take one?
We did.
And what happened after that?
Right after the selfie, I just remember kind of staying at the edge there and looking over the edge and just kind of still in thought about everything that had just happened and what's going on. And then I felt like a shove, and I was almost pushed over the edge.
Okay, we have to stop it right there. And he was referencing again, talking about the alleged emotional affair, but then, he feels a shove. So was that real?
No, it wasn't. There was pauses. You could see the difference. What I look for is a change from the not only just body language, but also verbal delivery, the flow of the conversation. And you could see where he did pause, right? You see the flow, throat clearing. You saw the pausing. So there was a change in the verbal flow. You can see his lips kind of pursing together. That's kind of worry. You can see the worry lights there. And then when he's describing it, when he's normally using these fluid movements, like as we call illustrators, you're bringing the story to the viewer, right? So you use your gestures when you're talking, and he does it. He's very illustrative. But then when he's talking about the pushing, there's no gestures.
Interesting, because you noticed that about the wife's testimony. Everybody should go back and watch the body language about the wife's testimony with Susan Constantine and your analysis. And you were talking about when she was swatting away the syringe during that testimony. And this is what you're talking about here. You're not noticing any of those sort of demeanors.
Correct. That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, if you remember, I talk about this in my book, when Brian Williams, you remember when he was caught lying about this helicopter crash? So right at the very moment when he says that his plane was hit, you would expect him to go, the plane got hit. There was no gestures, but he was gesturing all the way out there through. This is what I'm talking about. It's not so much that even with the gestures, right? Like they have to be in sync and they have to be timed, right? But it's also the lack of them. So when you look at their baseline, like right now I'm using my gestures, right? But if you ask me a probative question, one where I have to deviate from and try to tell it from differently, so you have to either think about how you're going to respond, or you're going to be aware of your body language, how it's being perceived. So the right and left brain kind of collide. It's like, I don't know what to do with this. So they concentrate on one area, what they're saying. And then what happens is the other part betrays them. So either way, one of the 6 channels, or more than the 6 channels, which is part of our whole anatomy, is going to betray you when you're lying. That's how you catch liars.
Interesting.
You felt a shove. Okay. Who shoved you?
Ari did.
What did you do right after that?
Barely caught myself and turned around and looked at her and was like, what the f-? Like,
okay. Turn around and it was like, what, like, was like kind of in shock. Like, what?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you move towards her?
Yeah, I did. I was like, just asking her, like, what was that? And started walking towards her. Because at this point, she was like 5 or 10 feet away from me.
Okay. So you walk towards her, and you mentioned when you're walking towards her, where were your hands?
Out.
Okay. Now, did you get close to her?
Yes, eventually, yeah. Well,
And by the way, when you start walking towards her, is she saying anything?
Not initially, but I turn around and I'm asking her, like, what just happened and what's going on. And as I'm starting to walk towards her, she starts yelling.
She starts yelling.
Yeah, help me, help me.
Okay. And then what happens?
And then I just keep walking to her, like, what are you doing?
And I get her, like, why are you screaming?
Yeah, what are you doing? And I get to her and I'm like, touching her, just putting my hands on her arms. And I was like, what are you doing? What's going on?
What happens then?
She keeps yelling and she kind of grabs my wrists and throws herself on the ground and pulls me down with her.
So now you guys are on the ground?
Yes.
Okay. When you're on the ground, what starts to happen?
She's holding on to me, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. But I'm also at this point trying to let go of, like, trying to get free, because she's like actively holding on to me. Like she has her leg like wrapped around one of my legs, and like is actively holding on to me and is yelling. And so I'm trying to, get free. And I get my one arm free, and I try to use it to get my other arm free, and she grabs me by the testicles. And
okay. Let me stop you there. Did you ever, in the course of this whole thing you described so far, ever try to pull her towards push her off or drag her towards the cliff's edge?
No, not at all.
Susan, what have you heard so far? What have you seen?
Okay, so there's a lot going on, and we could break this down. It would probably take me a full day because there's a lot of indicators that we're looking at. There was a fear response. He's licking his lips. He was really concerned about that. And then all of a sudden, his body language got really small. It kind of collapsed it in. It gave you kind of this helpless look, like he was like being, well, he felt helpless. So when you tend to feel small, you don't have confidence, you contract rather than step out. He should have been very open about expressing what happened. He did say 10 feet away. That was correct. That was true. And I think even his wife even said that. Remember when we did the last one? He used the words kind. There was a word he used which actually was equivalent to kind of, sorta. Those are not affirmatives. Those are not, the people who use that, they go back to language that is not exact. So when they say kind of, sorta, that is not conclusive. That is that's problematic. And then he used these just descriptions, and then he starts using his hand gestures where he touched her, right? And he actually uses this kind of punching motions with his fingers. It's saying that I'm actually nudging you in a direction. So I think that betrayed him. Like he really did nudge her to the end. And then he says, she kind of grabs my wrist. No, it didn't. She didn't kind of grab you. Either grabbed your wrist or didn't grab my wrist, that she was holding on to me, right? Well, I think all that was true. I think that she was trying to save her life and she was grabbing on anything she could, and she grabbed him in the you-know-what. And, whatever it took to get him to stop was probably a good idea. However, when people lie, 100% of what people say is not always untruthful. They only leave, they skip over, they add to, leave out, omit really crucial information. It's about 20% of that, or maybe even less. So a good portion of what he's saying is truthful. It's just that he's leaving out all the major little details, which actually bring the story together of what really happened. So when you look at in totality, all of the indicators that we've saw, it did not occur in the way that he is trying to describe to that jury. It's not accurate.
Well, we're not even to the end of this yet. So he's going to finish his story and talking about how he came to beat his wife with a rock. And then at the end of our discussion, he's going to be asked if he wanted to kill his wife. But here's the rest of this part of the testimony.
Okay. So you're on the ground. She's kind of holding on to you. You guys are, would you, there's kind of like a scuffle going on?
Yes.
Okay. And her legs wrapped around you?
Yes.
You mentioned, we got right up to the point where you said she grabbed your testicles. Is that right?
Yes.
How hard did she grab it?
I mean, this was, like
Pretty hard.
she was holding on to me by my testicles, basically, like that hard.
Okay. Did she grab it and let go, or did she grab it and hold on?
She grabbed it and held on.
Now, what happens after she does that?
Then I try to free my testicles, and so I'm like thrashing with, and I get both hands free, and I'm trying to get her to let go of my testicles, and then she hits me with a rock on the side of the face.
Okay. She's holding on to your testicles. You're kind of focused on that, obviously, and then at some point while you're focused on that, you
and it happened all really fast.
Yeah.
But
That's I'm glad you raised that up. Was this like happening slowly where you had
it
time
all
to
happened within probably less than a minute, maybe
quickly?
slightly more than a minute, but 2 minutes or something. From
but you weren't timing.
from the moment that we were on the ground and she was grabbing my testicles was like
It happened quickly.
everything after the grabbing of the testicles happened very quickly.
Okay. And you weren't timing it or anything.
No.
This is just your estimate. Okay. So now she's holding on to you, she's squeezing your testicles, and you kind of dealing with that. And she's on the ground and you're kind of on top of her?
Yes.
Okay. And you said then you felt you got hit with the rock.
Yes.
Where'd you get hit?
On the left side of my face.
How many times?
She kept doing it the first blow she landed really well, and after that I was able to block fairly well. She did like land a couple more, but not as bad as the first one.
So she still got your testicles?
Yeah, so she's like holding my testicle and just like hitting me like this.
And now do you stop dealing with your testicles?
Just focused on the rock at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Susan, what do you think?
Well, when we're looking at the body position, let's kind of go backwards and move forward. He's now with his right hand and he's talking about his left ear. So we have to actually think about that scene. Was she able to do that across his body, taking one hand, hitting the side of his head? The other thing is that he's not really owning that these blows were intense. Like it's kind of like the hand gestures are not committed. They're not fluid and they're not in a hard position. When we think about a blow, our hand gesture should be stiffened. Like I got hit, right? That's hard, showing hit. His gestures are just too flimsy to be showing that he got hit. So when we see that, his eye movements, you see some flutters. We see some little rapid eye flutters. His head kind of goes yes and no. So there's kind of like what we call like a bobblehead. So that's not really owning it. So it's either yes or it's no. It's not this. Well, that's kind of sort of. See, this is where the ambiguity comes in. So he's thrashing around. I'm not disagreeing that there was a thrashing around because we know that probably did happen. Again, remember, he's telling the truth, but he's leaving out certain information, and you can see it in his facial expressions, his eye flutters, his rapid ones, his head bobble is not consistent with yes and no's. The movements are not consistent with the actual blow. The tension in his hands are too flimsy. So there's a lot of things here that are very problematic.
Yeah, and so far, we've talked about the fact that he blames her. So he says that she tried to push him, that she attacked him, that he has no idea what's going on, and now he's defending himself. And then, he called his son and, was claiming that he was going to do suicide, and he was talking about that. And then he goes on the run from police for several hours. And here is his testimony about that.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
There was another point too when he had said that she hits my side of my face. There was no movement there. So it was only later that he picked that up. So I just wanted to look at that. You're looking for incongruencies and it's just not flowing well.
It's not flowing at all. And I don't think it flows here either, but you're the expert. So let's watch.
Were you actively moving around, dodging the investigators?
Not really. I moved around a few times, but I mostly just sat and actually like was in and out of sleep most of the day. If like my recollection was that like a couple of hours had passed and then I realized what time it was.
Okay.
So that's what he says was going on when he was hiding from police.
Yeah. Do you really believe that, Matt?
No.
You saw the disgust and the contempt. He rubbed his nose. So I just love how to detect deception because nobody can pass the test. It's going to come out somewhere. And you could see him struggling. You can see this forehead. The nose flares out, the nostrils do. And then the sniff, the disgust, the contempt, you can see it again. Then he rubs his nose. It's a cluster. There's multiple clusters.
And pointing out, when you're noticing his hand gestures and everything, that was fascinating. But also at certain points in time when he was trying to look over at the jury, was he just trying to convince them of his story at that point?
Sure, that's what he's doing. He's trying to build rapport with them. And in part that he knows it's really important. He's got to convince the jury. He may turn and he would say something. Amber Heard did the same thing, but she overkilled it. Where you're turning the chair, I don't know who's giving me the advice, but he doesn't do it often. It's only in certain pieces. So why did he do it? So I'm always looking at why do they do what they do at the moment that they do it? So that was significant for him because he wanted the jury to know that. But look at his forehead. He is struggling. And also too, look at this. Look at the veins popping out. See right there?
Yeah.
High cognitive load. So what happens when you just imagine you're really super stressed, you're going to see, and Koberger happened the same way. Boom, these big, huge veins come popping out the side of his head, and it wasn't always there. So when you're in high stakes situation, you have to really come across believable. That raises the stress level, which is cognitive load, and you can see it written all over his face. It starts to come out through the vascular part of his body, which is those veins right there.
So we're ending the direct, and he's asked point blank, did you try to kill your wife? We're going to play the clip right now. What are you going to be watching for?
Well, I already saw this piece. I would want him to answer yes or no without any other explanation. No, absolutely not, or no, I would never do that. Let's see what he says.
You testified that you reacted to defend yourself when she hit you with the rock, and it's all happening fast, and she has your testicles, you grab it and you hit her, and it was all happening fast. So you were defending yourself in that moment, is that right?
Yes.
And did you stop as soon as she stopped?
Yes.
Okay. But you also said you felt horrible about it.
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury how those things can coexist?
It's I believe in the right to self-defense, right? But I mean, in the moment, it was kind of an impulse. It wasn't like a conscious, like, I'm going to analyze this from like a legal perspective. It was, but yet.
First of all, who says that?
I know, but he's grasping. He's grasping for straws, right?
Yeah.
And he takes a deep breath in, right? And he can't even come out with a coherent explanation. So see the eye shutter, eye closures, blocking. Again, multiple clusters going on. If I went through this and tried to code it, I probably would have 15 different codes just in that one spot within 7 seconds. So he is out of his element. Again, he's not a good actor. He's not even trying to perform well, but this is what happens when you try to go off the grid and tell a story that's not true, and he's trying to make it up on the fly, even if he tried to rehearse it over and over and over again. When it comes right down to when he's asked those specific questions and the stakes are high, he knows that cognitive load builds, and then everything happens. The language is not fluent, the pausing hesitations, the filled pauses, the over explanations. It's not the flow is disrupted. All these things occur crazy. It's like if you were to have given this doctor an EKG, it would be all over the place.
Or a lie detector test, but you're
A lie detector.
detector.
It's a big Christmas tree. It's all.
All right, let's watch some more.
The result of it was harm to my wife.
Okay. How do you feel about that? She's got hurt.
Horrible.
You've learned that she is filing for divorce and seeking full custody of your children, yes?
Yes.
Do you want joint custody?
Yes. More than any. That's
okay. And there's been testimony that you've been in custody, yes?
yes.
Have you been able to speak with your 2 young boys from jail?
No.
Gerhardt, did you have a plan to kill your wife on the mountain that day?
No.
Did you try to throw her off a cliff?
No.
Did you try to stab her with syringes?
No.
When you hit her with the rock twice, why did you do it?
In self-defense.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay, there you have it. That was the end of the direct. What's your takeaways?
Okay, so I do witness prep, and this is a very important moment. So you're not going to want to jump off the grid too much, right? Yes, yes, no, no. So that's different from how he was explaining it before. See how he was jumping all over the place? Now the baseline changed back to the very scripted way he was answering questions at the very beginning of his testimony. If you look at the beginning of his testimony, everything was he was asked a question, he was given one short answer, one short answer, one short answer. It was very scripted. Now he's back into the script. He couldn't maintain the script before that. Now this is back into, we know he's got to say no. He did show genuine sadness. I think that this all is about the kids too now. You know, you could see the chin boss come up. You could see genuine sadness popping into his forehead. So I think that there is some emotion that is truly felt when it came to that about him. Of course, he doesn't have custody of his kids. He hasn't seen his children. That part is true. So overall, I think the jury, when they look at this, they're going to be assessing, of course, everything and all the evidence. But does he look credible? Does he sound credible? Is it convincing me? A lot of what he was doing right here was eliciting emotion and compassion and empathy from the jury. So he was showing that sadness, but also too, it came off fairly quickly. So when we look at emotions, emotions have a duration. When you're starting to feel sad and you're at the apex, it takes a little bit for it to come down from the apex. It kind of has an ebb and a flow. And when you see it kind of go up and then sharply drop off, that is partly performance. So that's what I'm seeing.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. I mean, and then Lord knows how it's going to unravel during cross-examination for the good doctor there in Hawaii. I'm actually a little bit surprised, too, on how long it went. And the fact that the defense attorney had broken up the story so much. So much of the story was putting the blame on the victim, Arielle, and her emotional affair. But, you know, and then breaking up, you know, what happened. And then the very end, coming back to it with, oh, by the way, did you try to kill her? So I don't know. I don't think that served him well. But
No.
Again, it's going to be up for this jury to decide.
That's right. They had to come up with some sort of strategy. And that one is what they came up with. And we know that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Let's see what the jury has to say. All
right. Susan Constantine, jury consultant, world-renowned author and body language expert. How else can we find you?
They can go to www.susanconstantine.com.
And a friend of the program and my friend. Thank you for this discussion. We are approaching the end of the trial there in Hawaii, and it all comes down to this: whether or not the jury believes his testimony. Jump in the chat and let me know what you think. Again, thank you for being here. Hit the subscribe and share this episode with a friend. We'll see you next time.